Sarah wakes up in a cold, dark prison cell. She feels completely disoriented and realizes she is heavily bound by chains. She discovers a thick metal collar secured around her neck and heavy shackles locked onto her wrists and ankles. Frustrated and scared, she struggles violently against the metal chains, but she cannot break free. She tries to figure out how she ended up in this miserable situation. She remembers the massive battle against the barbaric tribes in the eastern desert. Her kingdom's army clashes with the barbarian horde on a rocky, dusty battlefield. The human knights form defensive lines and use muskets and swords against the enemy. However, the barbarians charge forward with giant armored monsters that easily tear through the human ranks. The battle quickly turns into a massacre. A soldier runs up to Sarah and urgently reports that their front line is collapsing under the heavy assault. Sarah acts as the captain of the first company and quickly takes command of the chaotic situation. She orders her troops to fall back and form a new defensive formation. She decides she needs to buy her men enough time to escape. At that moment, a massive barbarian general named Vior enters the fight. He wears dark armor and a scary horned mask. Vior swings a giant dark sword and completely wipes out multiple knights with a single devastating hit. Knowing her regular soldiers stand no chance against him, Sarah tells her lieutenant to run away and inform her brother that she died fighting for her homeland. She then charges directly at Vior. She leaps high into the air and strikes him with her glowing golden sword. Vior blocks her attack effortlessly. They engage in a fierce one-on-one duel, exchanging incredibly heavy blows that create bright sparks and massive shockwaves across the battlefield. Sarah fights with absolutely everything she has, dodging and parrying his massive strikes. She eventually manages to land a solid hit that shatters Vior's dragon mask into pieces. Vior does not even flinch. He reveals his glowing golden eyes and white beard. He quickly disarms Sarah, knocks her to the ground, and looms over her. Sarah refuses to surrender and demands that he kill her right there. Vior refuses to strike the final blow. He tells her that he has very good uses for her body and claims her as his personal trophy. Back in the present, Sarah sits on the damp straw in the cell. She feels terrified about what the barbarians plan to do with her. She fully expects them to torture her for military information or treat her like livestock. Her thoughts are interrupted when the heavy iron door swings open. A young servant girl named Circe enters the cell carrying a woven basket and some strange tools. Sarah immediately yells at her and assumes the tools are meant for brutal torture. Circe completely ignores her complaints. She grabs Sarah's chains, pulls her arms high up, and secures them to a wooden board on the wall so Sarah cannot move or struggle. Sarah braces herself for intense pain. However, Circe simply grabs a wet cloth and starts washing the thick dirt and dried blood off Sarah's body. Sarah acts extremely confused by this gentle treatment. Circe tells her that she needs to be clean for the master. She mentions that she expected Sarah to be a giant, brutish woman because she actually survived fighting Vior. Circe notes that Sarah actually possesses a very feminine and delicate figure. Sarah gets deeply offended and claims a knight does not need to be feminine or pretty. Circe tells her that her opinion does not matter at all because she has officially caught Vior's eye. Sarah asks what she means by that statement. Circe refuses to explain the details and bluntly tells Sarah that she will never leave this place. Circe unlocks the wall chains and dresses Sarah in a clean, neat blue dress. She finishes the outfit by tying a large blue bow in Sarah's blonde hair. Sarah smells scented oils on her skin. She wonders why they are treating a captured prisoner of war so nicely. She quickly suspects she is being prepared and cleaned up for some kind of horrific barbarian sacrifice ritual. Suddenly, a loud, thunderous shout echoes through the dark dungeon. Vior approaches the iron cell bars. He looks absolutely huge and intimidating in his fur cloak and heavy armor. Sarah notices his slit golden eyes again and realizes he is definitely not a normal human being. She tries her best to act brave and composed. She proudly introduces herself as Serafina de la Viante, the noble commander of the expeditionary force. She tells him she will never beg for mercy and orders him to just sacrifice her already to get it over with. Vior looks highly amused by her speech. He tells her he has absolutely no plans to sacrifice her. He bluntly states that he brought her all the way here to take her as his bride. Sarah blushes deeply and starts yelling at him. She absolutely refuses to believe his words. She accuses him of trying to lower her guard with lies. She reminds him that they are mortal enemies on the battlefield. Vior casually explains that marrying an enemy is a completely normal practice for his clan. He says his ancestors have a very long tradition of marrying strong lady knights. Sarah calls his clan's tradition completely insane and refuses to accept her new role. Vior reminds her that she just told him to do whatever he wants with her a minute ago. Sarah realizes she made a huge mistake and gets even more defensive. Vior explains that he is not just following his clan's rules. He tells her that during their intense duel, he felt the true sincerity and passion of her sword strikes. He believes a person's sword reveals their true character much better than their words ever could. He confesses that he fell in love with her the exact moment they clashed blades. Sarah feels completely shocked and stands completely speechless. Vior tells her to relax because he will not force her to do anything against her will. He says they will talk more about this later and casually leaves the dungeon. Sarah stands alone in the cell, feeling totally confused by the entire situation. This bizarre marriage proposal triggers a memory from 7 years ago. Her brother Sidious sits at a desk in a grand, brightly lit office and announces the start of the new Eastern expedition. He officially appoints Sarah as the captain of the first company and orders her to bring eternal glory to their family name. He also mentions she received an invitation to a fancy noble banquet hosted by a countess. Sarah attends the party wearing a beautiful pink ball gown. The giant mansion is filled with extremely rich food, expensive wine, and fancy guests dancing to a string quartet. Sarah hates being there. She feels incredibly guilty that the nobles are feasting and partying while the common people in the city starve to death. She stands completely alone on a balcony and wishes she could just go home. 3 other noblewomen approach her and start gossiping. They openly mock her for wanting to fight in the war. They claim the eastern lands are full of terrifying monsters and dragons. They say women should just get married, stay home, and manage a household instead of holding a sword. They specifically mention that Sarah's biggest idol, Princess Wisterasia, disappeared in battle, using it as absolute proof that women cannot handle war. Sarah feels extremely frustrated by their ignorant words. She argues that nobles have a strict duty to fight for the people's peace and safety. She storms away from the party in anger and takes a horse-drawn carriage home. While riding through the dark, cobblestone streets, she hears a man desperately screaming for help. She jumps out of the carriage and finds 3 starving peasants trying to rob the man using farming tools like pitchforks and scythes. Sarah immediately pulls out her sword and quickly disarms them. The peasants fall to the ground crying and explain that they are only stealing because their families are dying of hunger. Sarah feels deep pity for them. She takes off her expensive purple-gemmed necklace and hands it directly to the robbers. She tells them to sell it to buy food and makes them promise they will never have to steal again. The men thank her profusely and run away into the night. Sarah looks at the dark city and vows to conquer the eastern lands so her people can finally live better lives. She goes back to the castle and kneels on a red carpet to pray to a large portrait of Princess Wisterasia. Her brother Sidious suddenly walks into the hallway and yells at her. He complains that she failed to find a suitable husband at the party. He tells her to stop playing pretend as a knight and get married while she still has good prospects. Sarah tries to argue with him, but Sidious ignores her. He suddenly appears wearing a terrifying suit of dark feathered armor and a creepy bird helmet. He looms over her, casting a massive shadow, and aggressively demands that she become his bride. Sarah suddenly gasps and wakes up from the terrifying nightmare. She frantically looks around and realizes she is not in the cold dungeon anymore. She is lying in a rustic wooden room on a large bed made of soft animal furs. She holds her head and tries to process her weird dream about her brother. Suddenly, she hears an incredibly loud noise beside her. She turns her head and freezes in absolute shock. The massive barbarian king Vior is lying in the bed right next to her. He is fast asleep and snoring incredibly loudly with his mouth wide open. Sarah stares at him with wide, panicked eyes, finally realizing her completely chaotic new life as the barbarian king's bride has officially started. That is the end of the story for now. Subscribe to the channel for more. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.